Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to bring you my top 10 favorite young adult horror books. If you don't follow my channel, you may not be aware that I read a lot of horror, but I tend to focus on adult fiction. But sometimes I dabble into YA, and I've said many times on my channel that typically the age group is just not for me when it comes to the books. I don't tend to relate very well to those issues anymore. I am several years past my own teenage years, and it doesn't always work well for me. However, this video and this list is here to celebrate some of my favorite YA books that in my opinion really transcend the age group and have a lot of all ages appeal. These are 10 of my favorites. They're not necessarily perfect 5-star reads, but they're a lot of fun. They're ones that I've really enjoyed and would definitely recommend to anyone who's open to reading YA horror. And you know what? I love a good top 10 list. And so as always, my disclaimers that this is only going to include, of course, YA books, and it won't include any books that I read for the first time this year because it kind of gives away my end of the year content. And so this is just a fun list, and if you want to hear more about my favorite adult horror books, I should have a list linked down below and in the cards, so check that out. All that being said, let's get started. First, at number 10, we have The Girl from the Well by Ren Shipeko. This is a piece of supernatural fiction that follows a young girl who is actually a dead spirit. She is a very vengeful ghost, and within the story you find out that she was killed by being thrown down this well and now seeks vengeance on the other killers out there. She comes across a young boy who's just moved to a new area, and he seems a little bit different. He has tattoos, he's just a little bit strange, and possibly they form a connection and go from there. This is a story that I enjoyed for a few reasons. One being the Japanese style cultural elements. It definitely is a nod to a lot of iconic Japanese films like The Grudge, and I really enjoyed the inclusion of ghosts, which is very much central to Japanese lore. And I did really like the relationship between these two characters, but I'll be honest, it's definitely a bit semi-romancy, which is not my favorite thing when it comes to YA, but this book definitely had a lot of the elements in terms of atmosphere, and the background was something I found very interesting. I'm always someone fascinated by Japanese culture, so I did like this one. Again, wasn't a perfect 5-star, but definitely did earn a place on this list. And then at number 9, we have Hold Back the Tide by Melinda Salisbury, and this is a piece of horror that I don't want to give too much about away because it's definitely one to experience for yourself. Basically, we follow a young girl who is living with her father, who she believes to be a murderer, and she is living with him in their isolated community by the ocean, and the story goes from there. It's really one that I want you to go into super blind because it blends together some of my favorite elements of horror, but it's one that if you know what's going on, you miss half the fun because it's a book where the horror elements show up very late, and so I almost feel like it's a horror spoiler to give away what those elements are. And instead I just like it because it's a very eerie setup. This girl is very isolated. The setting in Scotland plays a major role within the story, and you know that there is more going on. You don't trust her father, you don't know who to trust, and she's just trying to make her way through. It's very relatable, it's very simple, and my memory might be a little bit fuzzy, but I don't remember there being like a heavy romance element to this one, which is always a plus for me. And then at number 8 is Here We Are Monsters by Amalinda Berube, and this is a story of a sister who finds out that her younger sister has gone missing in the woods, and they used to be very close, but they have grown apart. The younger sister is very obsessed with imaginary play, and you find out that the older sister has moved on from that and is now much more focused on her group of friends and also has a love interest. Now, this is a book that does spend a fair amount of time with the older sister, running away and just kind of avoiding her parents and just wanting to hang out with her friends and not really deal with the larger issue. At first, when I read this book, I found that to be very frustrating because I thought that she should be home with her parents and understandably worried about her sister. But I do understand that this was kind of done for a reason. In a lot of ways, this is a story of coming of age, getting to see two sisters that again once were close and now have grown apart because of the difference in maturity or their interest. This is a book that I also compare to things like Bridge to Terabithia because of the focus on imaginary play. And of course, eventually the sister does go look for her younger sister and possibly find something going on. And I just really enjoy this one. It has a lot of elements that I do really like about it in terms of the horror. The ending I thought was really fun, and I do recommend it. It has kind of a woodsy feel because so much of it happens outside, and I don't want to spoil more, so just go check it out for yourself. Then at number 7, we have The Last Harvest by Kim Liggett, and this is a horror novel that is a piece of folk horror following a young boy who sees his father die at his feet and then has to take over the farm. He used to be involved in football and really has to focus now on helping out his family. Within this town, you find out that there are secrets, there are town rituals and things that have been going on for many years, and slowly it's revealed to the characters. I love this one because it has a great fall atmosphere to it. It takes place in fall, they talk about football and harvest, and it has just a good creepy undertone. It definitely is atmospheric. Again, there is a love interest in this one, which is not my favorite part, but the other parts of the story I thought were very well done. It has a very foreboding start to it, with the father, again, saying some strange words to his son, something about, I think, pleading the blood or something, and the story kind of spirals from there. It was one of my first introductions to folk horror, and I just thought it was very well done. And definitely I'd like to read more by this author because I really enjoyed this one and I never have done that, so maybe I'll change that one of these days. And then in number 6 we have Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesar. This is the first book in his set of slasher stories and my personal favorite of the group. Basically in this story we follow a young teenager who is moving to a new town with their father. You find out within this town there is this mascot who is a clown that kind of ties into the story, and there's a lot of disgruntledness between the adults and the young people in the town. There has been an economic falling out. A lot of the stores or places of work have closed down, and so because of that there is a lot of back and forth blaming happening. And within the story there's also a slasher element that somehow ties in to the clown mascot. And so within the story this is just a fun, violent, exciting story. It's very gruesome, and I was very impressed by this one. While it is technically targeted for young adults, I felt like it didn't talk down to the reader. I believe the author himself is or has been a teacher, and so the teenagers definitely ring true in all the good and bad ways about that. And this one just has a lot of maturity, definitely a lot of nods to horror films. I think anyone who loves the horror genre will appreciate some of the details put into this one. And again, it just felt mature. Yes, it's about a group of teenagers, but isn't every slasher story about a bunch of teenagers getting slashed down? And this one was just very well done, very fun, and I did enjoy it. Then breaking into the top 5, we have Frozen Charlotte by Alex Bell. And this is one of my favorite creepy doll stories. Within this book, we follow a person or a young girl who is going to go visit her cousins over the summer in this old house that was previously used as a boarding house, has now been turned into a home. And within one of the rooms they find these creepy little dolls, and within this story you find out that these are called Charlottes, and well, they possibly do creepy doll things as you would expect. This book is just genuinely creepy in how it deals with the dolls. I thought it was really exciting. I just plain enjoyed it. It was definitely one of the first times that I really connected with a young adult book since being a older person, for lack of a better word. And this one just was so much fun. I highly recommend it. I definitely think it's a little bit more underhyped than some of the other books on this list, but it's definitely worth your time. It's so much fun. And then at number 4 is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. And this is a story of a young trans boy who is on the run from a religious cult in which he grew up in. He ends up running across another group of individuals that are hiding out in this queer community center. With them, he finds a place to call home, at least temporarily. He ends up forming a connection with another young man who is also possibly queer, and he's also autistic, so you get representation there. And so on top of all that, this of course is first and foremost a horror story. So it's one where you find out that there's a reason this trans boy is on the run. There is more going on within this world. This is a story that's kind of a cross between post-apocalyptic because the world is in shambles, but also a bit of a dystopian because of the control of the religious cult, which I really enjoyed those elements. I thought it rang true and really was a great way to explore trans issues, looking through the lens of a very extreme cult that feels very possible to emerge in this kind of dire situation where everything on earth has kind of gotten torn up. And I can't remember how much is on the back of the book, so I probably should leave this vague, but this book has some really great gory elements. It's very violent. It has some really cool things that it does on the supernatural level that I thought were super smart and tied in really well with the trans themes. And yeah, I really like this book. It was such a good surprise. Again, it does have a YA romance, but I didn't actually find it cringy. I thought it fit the story very well, and I really got into this one. And then at number 3, we have Deathless Divide, which is the second book in the sequel that starts with Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. And really you should read the first book, but the book that really earns a spot this high on the list is the second book, Deathless Divide, because of the fact that I really fell in love with the characters. This is a piece of historical horror that is set right after the Civil War in America. However, the Civil War ends differently because instead of the way it actually wrapped up, it ended because there was a zombie outbreak. In this story, we follow a young Black Black woman who is being trained to protect and fight against the zombies in order to assist and aid these white women that they are chosen to protect. And so within the first book, it starts there. They meet other people along the way. There are complicated relationships. There are twists and turns. There are just really complicated situations that arise, and you don't really know who to trust, who to like. And I really love the queer and asexual representation that really gets brought out more so in the second book. And again, everything that is good about the first book gets so much better in the second. I just found everything to be more developed, more fleshed out. The story was more exciting. I found myself shipping characters. I don't ship characters. I don't care about their relationships, but apparently I do. And I was just heartbroken at certain moments. I was happy at other moments. It's just a book where I really got pulled in emotionally to the story. And again, at the same time, it's a zombie story. I love zombie stories, so I'm always excited when I can recommend them to you all, because zombie stories get a bad rap online, and so often they can be fantastic because really, it's not about the zombies, it's about the characters, and these ones are fantastic. And then at number 2, we have The Merciless by Daniel Vega, and this is a story that follows a group of girls attending a Catholic school. One of their friends just starts acting weird. I believe she starts to act a little bit emo, she seems a little bit down or depressed, and as any good group of girlfriends do, they realize that their friend must be possessed and therefore must be exorcised to get the devil out of her. So they proceed to have her come to their house, and they proceed to do what is their version of an exorcism, which is pretty much just teen torture. This book is brutal and is one of these books that completely blew away my expectations of what should be allowed to be filed as young adult, because this book in some ways is so inappropriate. It's gruesome, it's dark, it has some really messed up scenes, like huge content warnings if you were bothered by like body horror and torture and things like that, that again, young people shouldn't be reading. I love how deceptively cute this book is and how it's like a pentagram on it, but the book itself is really nice. It's like a nice pink hardcover, and despite that, this book is easily one of the most gruesome, hard-hitting horror books I've ever read, and it's young adult. So I love this book perhaps because it doesn't fit into the genre. I think it's kind of inappropriate to read, but don't get me wrong, I'm not banning it from any shelves, but like I wouldn't give it to like a 10-year-old. I don't think they can handle it. But definitely if you're looking for a YA book that has all ages appeal, and in some ways will probably appeal more to adults because again, it's pretty messed up, this is one of my favorites. I love it so much, and I hope you check it out if you haven't already. And finally, at the number 1 spot is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kirsten White. And this is a book that is historical horror following Elizabeth Frankenstein, who goes to live with Victor Frankenstein. It follows them in both the past and the present, so you get to watch how they acted together as children. They weren't technically cousins, but they were treated as such, and they definitely formed a relationship or an emotional tie. And then we follow them in the present day. Victor has gone away, and Elizabeth is trying to track him down. She's heard about the horrific things he's doing, and she wants to intervene. This is a piece of gothic horror that I just fell in love with. Again, what is with YA books and their cute pink covers? But this one is so adult, so complex. I definitely think it could have been classified as adult if that's something you're looking for, because despite being a shorter length, the maturity of the story, the themes, the characters, everything about it, I would not have known this is YA if someone hadn't told me. So this is a book that I really enjoyed, and what I love so much about it especially is the toxic relationship between Elizabeth and Victor, because again, they were raised as pseudo cousins, but they're not actually blood related, and so they end up having this semi-romantic relationship between them, but it's incredibly toxic because Elizabeth sees all of these strange and terrible things that Victor feels inspired to do, and she tries to stop him to a degree, but she's really not trying to get in his way too much. They go back and forth, and it's just one of those like messed up relationships where if your friend was dating this guy, you would tell her to get out of the relationship now. And so I really love the complexity. I never really thought that I liked historical horror or more gothic horror, but this book definitely changed my mind and opened myself up to reading more of that subgenre because I thought that this one was so well done. It's one that I love. It has a punchy ending. And yeah, I just can't stop thinking about it. Highly, highly recommend. Even if you don't read YA books, this is definitely one you want to try out. So that's it for this video here. I'd love to know of the books I talked about, which ones are you planning on checking out for yourself? And I'd love to know in the comments down below, what is your favorite YA horror book, especially if it's not one included on this list. I want to check it out, so hopefully I can read it myself and maybe come back with a new review or an updated list in the future. And don't forget, if you want to hear more about my adult favorite horror books, I will have a link in the description. And if you're new to my channel, I do read a lot of horror, thriller, science fiction, fantasy, but normally, again, I lean towards adult fiction. And if you want to help me out with this video, you can give me a thumbs up, you can drop a comment, even if just a little emoji like a ghost or a vampire. And if you want to help me out more, you can hit that little notification bell. That way you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.